Okay, now, fellow Americans, this is A.J. Wildman again, and we are talking today about jobs and business to an extent. We just wrapped up the cost of living proposals, and I have 5 proposals underneath the area of jobs, and it's not a little mix, but it's recycling, hemp, cannabis, take-back industries, is what I call it, and something called legitimate prostitution. There's never let it be said I don't get into some touchy little issues in this setup. So again, these are the American Peasant Party proposals, little video briefs on our proposals. So, recycling. This is something that's very near and dear to my heart. I've been doing it for years. I believe in it totally. And this actually ties into something we'll talk about later on, which is climate change, oddly enough. And we're going to start talking about jobs. We can make jobs out of recycling, right? You say, well, yeah, sure, why not? But because what we haven't done in this country very much is take recycling to the next level, meaning we set up major recycling centers around the country, and with the intent of collecting cardboard and glass and plastic, whatever is practical, including styrofoam, figuring out what practical thing to do with that, which seems to be like a product that a lot of people just don't want to deal with. Recyclers just want to trash it. But I think there's some possible practical uses for that as well. But what I'm proposing here as a national movement for recycling, not the nickel and dime stuff we're doing in most places. In some places, people aren't even doing it. What I'm proposing is there are 435 U.S. districts in this country, and that's how the House of Representatives is structured. That those U.S. districts are set up apportioned every 10 years when we have a census. From the 2010 census, we have, give or take, about 750,000 people in every U.S. district, and that is an awful lot of recycling. So what I'm suggesting, or proposing, is that we set up a major recycling center, at least one, there'll eventually be several, if not many, in every U.S. district. I mean, it will be a full function recycling center, meaning it will take in paper and plastic, glass, whatever we can bring in, all right, and figure out how to turn it into raw materials for building, which would then go out to, our building supply companies, Home Depot, Lowe's, other places around the country, other big chains around the country, and small chains like 84 Lumber, okay? And it would also go into manufacturing, all right? Right now, we actually are sending some of our recycling to China, believe it or not. What's the not believe going on in the world today. But, okay, we're going to send instead of sending it to China, where they process it into raw materials, make products, and then sell them back to us, we're going to interrupt that process. We're going to have jobs in building recycling centers, all right, initially. And we're going to have people in collections, a whole lot more collection, a whole lot more sorting and redistribution, or distribution, I should say. And that should turn into jobs in almost every district, certainly every district, and probably multiple recycling centers in every district. And this, strangely, is also, like I said, has a little bit of a bend towards climate change. And I will get more into that in some of the later proposals. And the plain fact is, whether you believe in climate change or global warming or whatever, all right, whatever your opinion is on it, the simple fact is, okay, that the water is coming up, period. This is not a question. In a rather believable documentary I saw from Maryland scientists, climate scientists on this, just mainly looking at the Chesapeake Bay impact, Eastern Shore impact of Maryland. That's where I live in Maryland, about 40 miles west of Baltimore City, in Westminster, Maryland. I'll have this as one of the links when I get down to that proposal. They were forecasting that by the year 2050, the water level in Maryland, in and around the shore here, will be up about 2.1 feet. Okay, 2.1 feet in 34 years. Okay, so maybe in 17 years it'll be up a foot. Eventually, we begin to lose the eastern shore. all right, it begins to come in, because if you've been around any of the East Coast, Gulf Coast, when you get close to the shore, it gets very flat. So you give it an additional 12 inches of water coming up, plus high tides, bad things begin to happen, and they don't stop. A lot of people don't know it right now, but for some time now, every day, twice a day at high tide, parts of Miami Beach, this city, flood. So in case you didn't know that was going on, there's places in New England where that's happening also. So as the water comes up, I'm also saying that what we're going to do is, as we realize that a given bunch of housing, boardwalk in Ocean City, for example, but mainly housing, as we realize that certain areas are basically going to have to be condemned, right, as the decades go by, we're not going to just let those houses drift into the ocean, or be, turn soggy, or whatever you want to call it, and just fall apart. We're going to take those houses, tear them down, and put them through these recycling centers. And then we're going to use that as we build new cities, new towns and cities on higher ground. We're going to have to relocate over the rest of this century, tens of millions of people along the East and Gulf Coast and West Coast. So this is just basically a start at long-term planning that we need to do for the sake of our grandchildren and their children. All right? Actually, some of us, I'm a baby boomer. I'm going to make it probably to in the 2040s someplace, and I'm going to see this coming up. And personally, I'm a great lover of Cape Hatteras, Newport, the Outer Banks, North Carolina, Kitty Hawk, Ocracoke Island, and those areas. So it kind of steers away from recycling, but that just gives you some sense. We can use recycling centers for jobs, raw materials, and manufacturing. So that's probably a good little insight as to what I have in mind there. So take care, and the next thing we're going to be talking about is hemp, in case you don't know what that is. Take care, and see you next time.